Joining us on the line is Peter Rex. He is founder and CEO of Rex, an ecosystem of tech companies headquartered in Texas. He graduated from Georgetown University and Harvard Law School, successfully turned a sole proprietor, bootstrapped real estate investment business into a $2 billion company with over 500 employees. And in 2020, he did the same thing that we here at the Daily Wire did. He got the hell out of California. He moved off the West Coast and he moved to Texas, knowing that Texas is a better state. Peter, thanks so much for joining the show. Really appreciate it.
Ben, great to be here.
So you built your businesses in San Francisco, in Seattle, and you've now moved your business. Maybe you can talk a little bit about the decision-making process there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we made the move out of there. Ultimately, it came down to faith, family, freedom for us was some of the underlying driving factors that motivate us to move. But say when I look at my company, we think about things over a 60-year time frame. And when I thought about things over that type of time frame, I thought about raising my kids. We also have employees who also care about raising their kids, which is natural. And when we thought about the environment we're building our company in and our kids and their future, that environment has a big impact on them. And we want to be in an environment that is more conducive to faith, family, freedom, an environment which is more open-minded. And we had noticed that things were getting more and more bigoted, more intolerant. And we felt that that was not a great place to build a company or to build our families. Because ultimately, when you build a company in the long run, who really controls your company? Is it you in the long run? No, it's your employees, right? And that's something I've noticed. And I don't want my company controlled by people who are intolerant of others. I want it to be in a great environment where we have diversity of opinion and diversity of different types of folks.
You know, Peter, one of the things that's happened here over the course of the past few years is more and more companies moving off the West Coast and moving to places like Texas, or as I put my company in Tennessee, some of my company in South Florida, moving to freer states that do value faith and family. One of the things that's happening as well is that big companies that don't necessarily share those values are now following to these areas, right? Facebook has now decided they're going to move their Meta headquarters to Austin, Texas. There are a lot of people who are in red states and they are fearing that big tech is going to take the values that it has helped promulgate nationwide and internationally, and then they're going to bring thousands of people into red areas and just make those red areas worse. Well, what's your take on that?
I think that, first of all, it's a legitimate concern. And I think it's good that people are worried about that, because if people are not worried about losing their freedoms, then they'll lose them eventually. So I think that's a good concern. I'd like to fan the flames of that concern. However, at the same time, I also want to point out a little countervailing point here to just ease their concerns here. If you think about people that left, say, Cuba, right? For example, I think you've moved to South Florida, so you'll see this down there. Cubans are not favorable towards communism because they experienced it firsthand. So the people that fled Cuba were not bringing communism with them into Florida, into the United States. In fact, what they brought is a lot of entrepreneurial thinking, a lot of go get after it mentality, and a lot of love for what America stands for, because it provided a home to escape essentially the totalitarian environment that was trying to actually reach in and do similar things that we see happening now, where they're trying to reach in and even force educate their kids. In Cuba, if you talk to some of the older Cubans, they could tell you about this. So the Cubans and their children are some of the biggest patriots in the country, right? And you'll find them in South Florida, there in Miami, all over the place. They basically built the city, right? And I think similarly, we have people coming out from the West Coast. They're moving out here to Texas. They're moving out to Florida and other places, Tennessee, Nashville, right? And they are bringing with them their brains, their talent, their connections, their networks. I think they're also bringing a distaste for totalitarian type behavior, for oppressive ideology, and things like that.
We're speaking with Peter Rex, founder and CEO of Rex, an ecosystem of tech companies headquartered in Texas. So Peter, one of the things that we were sort of astonished by when we moved our company out of Los Angeles is what percentage of our employee base came with us. We figured we were going to lose at least 50% of our employees. Instead, something like 92% of our employees decided to come with us. What was your experience moving your businesses? I mean, you have 500 employees off the West Coast into places like Texas.
So Ben, you had 90% of your employees moving across the country with you and selecting in, right? We experienced a similar type thing, and we also experienced a lot of gratitude from the spouses that had made the move as well, especially after they landed here and experienced some of the freedoms and a different environment. So we had a similar type experience. Now, there were some people that couldn't make the move that did want to move, but there's just realities, right? You've got entanglements locally, you've got loved ones you care for, you might have elderly people that are there that you need to watch over. So not everybody could make the move, but we had a very high percentage of our people make the move, and all of our key executives were able to make the move. So
This is Peter Rex, founder and CEO of Rex. So Peter, one of the things that you've written a lot about is the big tech sort of left-wing mentality and how we fight that. So on the right, there's been a lot of consternation over this. I am deeply concerned about big tech and its lean to the left. Obviously, we here at Daily Wire, we've been reliant on Facebook's algorithm for a long time with regard to our traffic. We've obviously seen places like Parler deplatformed by Amazon Web Services. And a lot of folks on sort of the libertarian right, and I sort of put myself there generally, usually say, okay, we'll just build an alternative infrastructure. The big problem is that when the government is bullying companies into doing stuff that Democrats want, it's quasi-governmental action. What do you think is the cure here for the fact that big tech, number one, leans left, but number two, has decided to implement actual leftist discriminatory policy at the behest of Democrats in Congress very often?
Well, first of all, I'd say, Ben, is that the solution's not going to come from the government, and I think that the government's is a short-term. It seems like as an obvious solution to some people, oh, the government would get involved. But the reality is, if you play that out a little bit further, the government getting involved is going to, as you sort of intimated here, going to actually put them further in bed with some of the power structures already out there. And the reality also is that these big tech companies are very much already in bed with big government because the lobbying groups and everything else are so tight. I mean, you go out to DC and you'll see some of these heads of companies have houses right there in DC. And they're not there because they like the swampy weather and stuff and the humidity and all. So they're there because they want to make sure they have a seat at the table and they can influence things. But it's also vice versa because the politicians are getting money or paid or different career advancement opportunities when they're done with whatever they're doing or while they're even doing it. So there's a lot of this type of behavior. And that's kind of normal that happens in the history of the country. But what I'd really caution against is thinking that the government's going to be the solution here. It almost never is the solution. The government generally, what you want it to do is stay out of the way and open up entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurship, I think, is the solution here. When you think about yourself, Ben, right? What did you do when you saw, limited points of view in the media? Did you decide, oh, I want to be a correspondent on CNN, I'll be that alternative voice? Or do you say, oh, I'll get a segment and I'll stay on Fox News, right? No, you created a whole new platform, essentially, new ecosystem of things, which podcasts, news, even film stuff, from what I understand, and Daily Wire. Now you got the Ben Shapiro show. So you did that instead, right? Now that was a solution driven by entrepreneurial behavior that actually created something new and different. And that was the right way to do it. And that's what I'm proposing here is similar. I'll give a second analogy to this is you look at the problem we've had with the oil cartels, right? And I would go so far as to say that has a lot to do with why we've been embroiled in wars in the Middle East for a while is because of oil. I don't necessarily think it was because people love the sandy regions out there so much and they care so much about democracy. Now, some of those things are true, but I would just say that it was a strong causality there or correlation. Let's at least give it that with the oil problem. And the cartel really had a stranglehold on the West. But what solved that? Was it we built a single refinery? No, we built a whole ecosystem, and we did it through fracking, which was, again, entrepreneurial behavior and allowing people to do what they do, which is to come up with market-based solutions. And we did it in West Texas is a phenomenon when you see what happened in the Permian Basin out there. And if we got out of their way still, we'd see that we'd have oil prices lower. The question was, how low can these guys go? If the oil cartel wants to set it up at $60 a barrel, well, these guys will go to 55. They're like, oh, maybe it's 50 now. No, it's not. They keep going down and down. So when you open up this entrepreneurial behavior, you have market-based solutions. And that's really what we want to see happen in the technology arena. We need to create a similar new ecosystem. And what I'm proposing is that you can't just build a refinery. You can't just build a pipeline. You got to build everything, and you got to do it in a different place. And I think we can make a huge dent and actually start this going on and really have a new ecosystem going within 3 years. And I'm building it out of Texas. And I've already got 10 companies we're spinning up in the technology space. And I want to encourage other people out there to get involved. I mean, you could be tech talent, join companies like myself that are committed to building things grounded in virtue and serving people. Or if you've got capital, you don't have to invest with me, you can invest in other people that are like me. And if you're out there like people like yourself, support it. Try to understand, how can we solve this? Not with simple-minded approaches, but with elegant solutions that are, meet the complexity of the challenge.
Well, that is Peter Rex, founder and CEO of Rex, and obviously that is true. Conservatives have been dedicating hundreds of millions, billions of dollars to various projects that are specifically in the political space, while the left has been building the infrastructure it needs to actually make a dent in both areas. The right really needs to shift its money and its resources over to the companies that the right is actually really good at building. The right is very effective in the market space. They're a lot less effective in the governmental space. Peter, thanks so much for the time, and congratulations on the success of your company.
Ben, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.